Hi, I'm Jim McCann, founder of 1-800-Flowers. We created this podcast to share the wonderful people we get to interact with, we get to meet, we get to know, and most importantly, get to learn from. So I invite you to join us on this journey here on the Celebrations Chatter podcast. Hey, Colin, how are you today?
Jim, how are you?
Just peachy.
Good to hear. Thanks for having me.
It is peachy season after all.
There you go. Love that.
Let's start at the very beginning about how you came up with the idea for Love What Matters, and then we'll work our way forward to what it's become today, which is nothing short of amazing, in my opinion. But the backstory, we've been fans of yours for several years now, and I remember Meredith coming to me saying, I'm following a site that's really connects to people in a very special way. So how did this come about, Colin?
Yeah, thank you. It's difficult to talk about this without really talking about my mom. She was really the inspiration for everything that I built. And really what happened is, I have two brothers, and
you're the youngest, right?
I am the youngest. And I'm definitely more of a creative, individual. And what happened is my mom got sick with breast cancer, and then she had ovarian cancer. And she beat the breast cancer and had a courageous battle. But then what typically tends to happen with the chemotherapy with ovarian cancer, unfortunately, is there's a resistance that builds up, and you only really have a couple of years if you're lucky. And she did. She had a couple of years, and she lived them courageously and beautifully, and then she lost her life. But prior to that, I would fly into Florida and I would have these lovely goodbyes with her, and every time I would see her, she was still the classic mom, typical mom, worried about her kids, thinking about us and not thinking anything about herself.
That's what moms do.
Exactly. And she would say to me, I think you're going to have a really hard time once I'm gone. And I want you to start thinking about what you're going to do when that happens. And I had no idea what that meant. But she kept kind of hitting me with this message over and over again. And
challenging you to really think about what you were going to do next. And
exactly.
How you were going to handle this.
Exactly. And finally, our last goodbye went in and obviously said a lot of things to each other. But one of the last things she left me with was, again, hey, Carl, once I'm gone, you're going to have a really hard time. And I want you to take this grief that you're going to feel and let it fuel you and create something beautiful with it. And I don't think she knew what that was. I certainly had no idea what that was or what that meant. But of course she was right. And she passed away, and I was a mess and struggling and having a hard time. And you lose your North Star. And
how old was your mom when she passed?
She was 68. Young. Yeah. I mean, she had a great life. But yeah, it still feels like you're even when you lose someone in their 90s, you still feel like you were robbed.
Oh, there's still a loss. There's no question. Yeah.
And so I kind of looked around at that point in my life, and it really kind of made me pay attention in a way that I wasn't before. I was kind of tapping into things in life that I really hadn't in the past. And so I said to myself, well, okay, I'm here struggling with grief, but somebody else, across the subway from me might be struggling with their own terminal illness. Or somebody may have a child who has autism, and they're trying to understand, okay, well, what does this mean? How do I navigate this kind of labyrinth of helping my child? And I want to do what's best for him. Or someone can't have a kid at all and has IVF, is going through IVF, and they're dealing with the emotional challenges of IVF, the financial burden of it. And so I started to kind of see all of these challenges in life that we're all kind of connected through. And I just started to build. I built on social first. I built on Facebook first at the time. This is going back now to 2012, 2013, and built that page up to about 8 million people.
8 million people. Wow.
Just natively, yeah, no paid.
And what kind of, if you remember back that dozen years or so ago, what kinds of first interactions did you get? You were posting about how you were feeling, how you were coping, and then people would respond to it?
Yeah, it was really just extraordinary stories all along of hope, compassion, kindness, overcoming obstacles, extraordinary acts of kindness, all of these things that just kind of like, prove we're all connected in a weird way, right? And show like, okay, well, maybe we're a lot more similar than certain people would have us believe.
So at that time, when you're in the lowest points of your grief, your sensitivity, you're standing there on a crowded intersection on 44th and Lex waiting across the street, and you look at each side of you and there's someone there, and now because of your nerve endings being so raw, you're saying, boy, I have this incredible pain. And now you're sensitive to, I wonder what that person next, how come they don't know that I have this pain? Or I wonder what pain they have. So it just caused you to be aware of yourself and aware that others were going to have other kinds of feelings. And that inspired you to say, hey, let me share this with anybody and see what the answer to that question is. What are they going through?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the empathy definitely, was through the roof at that point. And I think the goal all along was, how can we create something that's not only cathartic for the person who's writing the story and telling the story? Because, as you know, when you process something, there's different ways of processing it, and writing is one of those ways.
One of the most powerful ways.
Exactly. But also for the reader to kind of be going through something, and a lot of times it's that very thing that the person who wrote the story had gone through. So the reader is experiencing it firsthand, and they're reading it and they're saying to themselves, oh, well, if this person dealt with this and they got through it and came out the other side, I can do the same thing. And so that was the goal all along. And so kind of, how do we develop this oftentimes viral, just because of the connection, deeply personal storytelling platform? And that's kind of how we launched it, just social, Facebook and Instagram. And then brands started coming to us, doing brand campaigns and working with clients.
Okay, give me an example of a brand campaign. So you have this community, people are expressing themselves, they're reading other people's expressions, they're finding comfort in that, they're learning from that. They say, oh yeah, I was there too. And I was there just recently, only weeks ago, that I felt just like that. And now they feel inspired to say, geez, in just a few short weeks, your emotions will ebb and you'll start to feel this way. And now people are helping one another, which is how, like giving is the gift. Helping other people is awfully good for us too. Now, when a company wants to get in touch with your community or be in front of your community, give us an example of a brand campaign and how brands think about engaging with your community.
Yeah, I think there's probably two favorite examples that I have. One is Southwest Airlines. So Southwest came to us and retained us for a year. And basically, they wanted to tell stories of their employees on their planes, things that were happening, amazing things they saw happening, and customers on their planes. So, for instance, you would have things like babies being born right on the plane, or you would have things like simple things like
those are all those kids we know named Sky.
Yes, exactly. Or simple things like a mom who has a crying baby, and they're walking them down the aisle, trying not to upset the other passengers, tiptoeing around. And then all of a sudden, a father will stand up and saying, like, how could I help? And, is giving them a toy, or is, there's a story that develops around two strangers interacting. Or they're flying sick children for free across the country, and kind of, just want to share like how beautiful it is to be, seeing these kids have comfort. So things like that. And then another type of campaign was with American Greetings, where oddly enough, with the grief I was experiencing, they were doing an IVF campaign and a grief campaign. And the grief campaign was around getting a tattoo of a signature from a loved one who had passed away. And I saw that campaign and thought, wow, I don't know how many other people have actually done this, but we pushed it out to the Love What Matters audience and we got hundreds of stories back.
Of people who've done the same kind of thing.
The same exact thing. Yeah. Had gotten the tattoo. And I had no idea, how common that was and how beautiful it was. And so from that, we were able to kind of create this beautiful feedback loop and push those back out across all platforms and really just kind of help amplify the videos that they were doing and help kind of tell those stories. So
now, when you say push it out across all platforms, what do you mean?
So we have Facebook was about 8 million, Instagram is about 500,000, our email newsletter is about 200,000. We're relaunching our podcast.
2001. I just signed up for it.
Oh, nice. We're relaunching our podcast, which typically receives anywhere from 30 to 40,000 downloads per episode, depending on which episode you're in. And then, there's ancillary platforms like Twitter and Pinterest, but the big ones are really, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We have about 140,000 subscribers there. So we're multi-platform and we're trying to really double down on, telling these deeply personal stories that really anyone can connect to, anyone can relate to, because I've yet to meet someone who isn't going through something, who isn't battling something.
And when you meet that person who isn't dealing with something, let's put them online right away, because it's not going to last.
Yeah, exactly.
In the dozen years that you've been at this, how have your thoughts about grief and the grieving process changed?
That's a good question. Everyone asks, does it get easier when you lose someone? And I don't think it does. I think, if anything, you kind of get more in touch with that grief, if that makes any sense. And I think for me, it's just about talking to my mom still. And I think that was part of, when she left, she would say to me, just talk to me. Like whenever you feel like it, talk to me and maybe I'll be there. So I think it's made me just feel more being able to talk to her, pray to her. It's made me feel in touch with it, if that makes sense.
Now you've heard and felt scores of other people share their grief journey. And I wonder, had the word easy comes to mind, but it's not at all right. But it might have been a different journey for you if you had been exposed before you lost your mom to the stories of other people and how they've handled loss and what the process feels like to them and what kinds of moments do they find themselves in. I just wonder if information and hearing other people might have helped you to be in touch with where you are on your own journey.
Yeah, I think so. And I feel fortunate. I feel gratitude above everything else, just because, I got to say goodbye. Right. And a lot of people.
And how important is that?
I mean, for me, it was incredibly important. Right. I think, I talk to a lot of people and read a lot of stories of people who have their loved ones ripped out of their lives.
I think we all hope and pray that we will have the opportunity to say goodbye.
Sadly, I think it's rarely the case, just because that's life and that's just what happens. But yeah, I feel fortunate, to know that it was our last goodbye. And I think honestly, by the time I left my mom's house that day, she was like, okay, I know you love me. Okay, stop. That's enough. That's enough. I probably told her I love her, 1,000 times. And she definitely felt loved. And, she's the center of our family, and I think moms are the center of most families, and moms bring people together, bring families together, and I think she challenged us to stay close, stay together as a family, look out for each other, take care of each other, and so I think now it's up to us to kind of keep her memory alive through the actions that she would have taken had she been here.
I think the information flow, the sharing that comes on Love What Matters, your sites. I was reminded this morning in chatting about with the team here about our discussion now. Joyce, the newest member of the team, said that she had just read that if you're 30 years old and your parents are 70 and life expectancy in this country is 77 and you live several states away from them, so you have to fly to go see them, and that's going to average twice a year, that you have 14 more times you'll see your folks. And it just hit me. And I said, when you do that math, when you allow yourself to think like that, it's helpful and it's constructive to quantify things so that you don't assume that they'll be there forever. And you don't assume that you'll see them hundreds more times, because when you put a little practical reality and math to it and quantify it, changes how you behave and how you think.
It's funny. I think I saw that same piece, and it really does open your eyes in a way that, would never happen before. And it's interesting because I think we all like to think we have infinite amounts of time. We all like to think we're going to see, our loved ones forever, our children forever, our parents forever. And I think it's really hard to get in that mindset where no, life doesn't work that way. We have a limited amount of time to be with the people we love, to tell the people we love how we feel about them, and to really just savor the time we have. So yeah, I think that's a really important way to live. Is people always say savor the moment, but I think it's really maximizing the time we have.
I have a buddy, Justin Blatt, who wrote a book called Daddy Saturdays. And he did the same kind of exercise. He said, I have 900 Saturdays with my kids before they're 18 and likely off to college or out of the house. And he is, and I wrote a book about it, and he is and has been very, very deliberate about those 900 Saturdays. And he plans great adventures and great trips and great activities for his kids. And so it just helps you to be conscious and not assume, like you were just saying, Colin, that, I have forever and it's infinite. And no, I don't even need to think about those things. We do. And people like you, Colin, and my buddy Justin help remind us of that. Another subject that's been we've been chatting about here at Celebrations is around the idea of living eulogies. Now, it needs better words than that. But because you're one of the few of us who've had the opportunity to say goodbye and express how you feel, even if it was 1,000 times, not everyone gets that opportunity. And there'll be surprises, there'll be circumstances in life where you don't get to say goodbye. And I remember my dad died in a popular song in 1989, was released, I think, in December of 88, was Mike and the Mechanics' In the Living Years. And I remember driving to the hospital. He was sick. He had been operated on. The surgery didn't go well. But I still, listening to the song, I tried to make amends. But you're fighting the idea of, I don't want to act like I think he's going to die. But on the other hand, I do have things that I want to say, and I want to make sure I say it because I know I want him to hear them. And so you have to balance those interests. But I think the families that say, hey, you're in great health, and let's plan a family dinner because I want my kids to hear what I want to say to you guys. What's your thoughts there? What is your community expressing about that idea? Making sure you tell people how you genuinely feel about them. Don't wait until you don't have the chance.
On the one hand, it should be simple because we don't want to have regrets and we want to correct any, wrongs that have happened. But from what I've seen in the stories that I've read, it gets very complicated, right? And family relationships can be complicated.
Do you think?
Yes. And, I think it's really hard and it's complex. And I think I wish it was as simple as, hey, I know I did X, Y, and Z to you. I'm sorry. I think oftentimes you have to unravel a lot of these issues that have happened over years and years and sometimes decades in families. I think I was lucky in my situation that I don't know. My mom was a boy mom. She had 3 boys, and we were always the wild, running around boys. And we were.
Where'd you guys grow up?
We grew up in a little town called Cheshire, Connecticut. And so, men are typically not too complicated, but mothers and daughters, there's a lot of complications that come with that. I think we were all mama's boys, and we all would do anything for our mom, and just try to make her happy. And when she was happy in the house, we were happy in the house, right? And so, nothing but wonderful memories and childhood memories there. But yeah, I think for a lot more people, it's really tough. And to your point, you're trying to reconcile. It's almost like you're trying to save face, and like, even though it could be the end of their life, you're trying to reconcile what's the right thing to say or do. I think luckily in my situation, I knew that was it, right? I knew I had the clock was winding down, right? And so I knew this is it. Okay, let's just tell it like it is. And that made things easier. Harder, but easier.
How's the business side of what you do now? Is it going well for you?
Yeah, we've been pretty fortunate. I think the expansion of all these different platforms, things like podcasts, things like email, we're doing less now. These days, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook wants to keep you on platform. So, posting natively, as we call it, on platform gets a tremendous amount of reach versus, our website these days is down, but still gets about 500,000 unique visitors a month. In the old days, we were up to about 20 million page views a month in December. And now that's way down to probably 20% of that. But those interactions and that reach is still found just natively across platform.
Hi, I'm Jim McCann.
And I'm George Everly Jr.
During the COVID-19 epidemic, I stumbled upon an article that Dr. George wrote, which had a real strong impact on me in terms of how COVID was and was likely to impact our social connections, our relationships. And it really, really resonated with me. So I reached out to George, basically wrote him a fan letter, and that began our relationship.
We found a mutual interest in helping people become their best selves, especially in times of adversity.
Together, we embarked on a quest to co-write Lodestar. That journey began with countless hours of researching the most impactful self-help books out there.
Once we had our picks, we combined the science with the practical.
The result of our journey, the creation of a one-stop shop for the best of the best in self-help.
We decided to write this book to help others go from where they are to where they want to be and be the best possible selves they could be.
So if you're looking to boost your career, build stronger relationships, or simply become the best version of yourself, Lodestar is here to guide you on your path. You mentioned Mark Zuckerberg, and he's certainly in the spotlight a lot for a lot of reasons. And there's a lot of hue and cry now about social media and all its evils. I think what gets lost there in that condemnation, and I don't doubt that it has negative effects, particularly on very young people. But for older folks like me and young folks like you who've seen the good that social media has brought by the ability to share and connect, I think it gets a bad rap. Just today, I was chatting with a friend. We've never met in person. She's a COVID buddy, and she's out of the country most of the time, and and we get to chat once in a while. But after a few minutes, you realize you don't even remember that you're looking into a camera or you're looking at an image on the screen. And we've definitely become friends. And I have a really good friend who we were COVID buddies, Dr. George Everly, who I just wrote a book with. It's coming out next month. And I wrote him a fan letter when he wrote an article in Psychology Today in March or April of 2020 about what he perceived to be the effects of the COVID lockdown, which was just starting then, and how he thought it would impact our relationships and how we interact with one another. And I thought it was terrific. And I wrote him a note of basically a fan letter saying, I think your work is terrific and I hope we have occasion to meet someday. And he reached out to me and we connected and we became friends. And we didn't meet until last September, but he invited me to do a book with him after we'd worked together for a couple of years and spent a couple of years on that book. And we only met for the first time in September, so not quite a year ago. But trust me, we were good buddies, and we spent a lot of hours in the same room, metaphorically. We were over digital connection, but I would never have met him. The pandemic would have been much worse on me and so many of my friends and family that I know of if we didn't have these tools, Zoom and these recording tools and these communication tools. Tell me what you think, because you're a living example of a platform and a set of platforms that genuinely helps people that would not exist weren't for these platforms, these social media platforms.
That's such a great story. Wow. Well, yeah, I think, when people talk about things like that, I always think back to, us getting a Commodore 64 computer when I was very little and, learning the technology.
It was big and the screen was little.
Yeah, exactly. And learning how that system worked and wow, what is this? And, how does all of this come together? And, there's games you can play and systems you can run and documents you could open. And, it was all brand new and exciting. And I think to a large extent, I don't know that I would have been able to, have a lot of the biggest part about what I do, I think, is finding leverage points within social media platforms to organically grow those pages and those digital assets, right? Would I have had those skills if I didn't learn computers at a very young age? I don't know. I don't think so. But then I think, the other side of that is if you look at the statistics around young girls, I mean, young men too, but specifically young girls using social media, it's incredibly damaging for their mental health. Incredibly damaging. And I don't know if that is, peer pressure or bullying or why it's worse, for little girls than it is boys. But I think, I think people are waking up to the ages that kids should be using this at, when kids should get phones, how much time they should be spending, how much screen time.
So you're an expert on social media. You use it every day in your work. You're a media veteran. You're a father. Would you age gate access?
Oh, I mean, for my kids will absolutely not be allowed to use social media. Probably, I don't know, 14 would be the youngest. 16 ideally would be, the start. But I think by the time, I'm an old dad, so my son right now is 2. So by the time they're of age, who knows what this world is going to be?
Well, I have grandkids. The youngest is 2, about to turn 3. And I've seen that she can be a little upset when her parents take a screen away from her and she was in the middle of watching something. Wow.
No, the reaction to the screen, just from me holding my phone, the reaction of how he tries to grab it and just, tap things, it's not the same reaction as when you take another toy away. It's very different. And that really caused us, some alarm bells, and we realized like, oh, this is potentially damaging. So I think, yeah, it's like anything else, caution and common sense can go a long way.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I think you as parents with kids the ages of yours and my grandkids, it is a tough challenge for parents to regulate while everyone else is doing it, or just getting the phone for the first time. My grandkids, the two oldest, 15 and 12, were allowed to get phones in the last year or two. They were clearly the last of their age group in their class to have one.
Yeah, and then I've heard stories where people or parents are extreme and they don't allow kids to have phone or screen time, and then it becomes, well, I'm the only person in my grade or my friend group and my grade to not have this experience. Now I'm left out. Now I'm resentful, right? So it's like you really can't win as a parent these days. So
That's why I was just reading probably over the weekend about a couple of school districts that are mandating no phones in the school. That makes it so much easier on the parents. I'm sure the parents can stamp their feet and say
yes.
that's ridiculous. But when it's dictated, mandated, and it's everyone, it applies to everyone equally, I think that might be an easier path for systems and for parents.
Oh, absolutely. I wish that was the case across every school.
What resonates the most on your sites now? What topics are trending that you think surprise you maybe? Or what things put a smile on your face?
Well, I'm always personally partial. So my father was adopted, and I'm always personally. I don't know. I love adoption stories, and there's something about a family who either can't have their own child or desperately wants to give a home to a child, and a child who either hasn't known love, what love feels like, or hasn't known it in a way that is safe, that is comforting, that is, just pure. And I think you bring those two things together and it's a pretty magical moment and a magical experience. And I think those stories of just, you take a 16-year-old child who's been through 15 foster care homes, who has given up on finding a family years ago, let alone recently. And they're like, okay, I'm old, that ship has sailed. And then all of a sudden the family comes along and they're just saints. And they take them in and give them a family and are there for them for the rest of their life. So I think those stories will always be close to my heart, probably because of my father. But yeah, I think you can find beauty in any of these stories where it begins with struggle but ends with overcoming. Whether that's an act of kindness, I think we've done some shooter stories, with some of these stories over the year where there's a active shooter either at a school or somewhere else, and strangers show up and either act as a shield or bring them to safety or text them that everything's going to be okay. Like these kind of stories where heroes emerge exactly out of seemingly nowhere. I mean, someone the other day I saw a story where someone had just gotten out of jail for a misdemeanor. They were driving on the street on the highway, and there were these police officers in an active gun battle, and a cop had been shot several times. And this guy just pulls over, gets out of his car, drags the police officer out of the way who had been shot, and brings him to safety while this active gun battle is happening. I mean, those are the types of stories where you wonder how much of that is destiny and how much of that is just.
And of course, we all go, "What would I do?"
Exactly. Yeah.
Any of the stories that have been told on Love What Matters, you being a media guy, do you ever say, "Geez, that's a story I want to bring to life and share with other people and make it into a feature film or a video or a documentary"?
Yeah, we've had those discussions and those conversations. I think my dream is probably down the line as a writer. So, my oldest brother runs an event called Crime Con, which is a true crime event. And my middle brother runs a company called Red Seat Ventures, which is kind of a brand studio. They build businesses around personalities. And so, I've talked about, I've worked on podcasts, I've worked on writing podcasts. And I've always dreamt of developing a screenplay. And I think, we've done over 12,000 stories now. So I think the hardest question would be
12,000 stories. Wow.
Yeah. The hardest question is going to be which one of these, do we develop? Because there's, I would say, hundreds, if not, more than that, options available.
On the podcast a month or so ago, at the end of talking about the subject matter we intended to, I just continued to speak to the lady, and she had a fascinating personal story. Fascinating. And I just hung on every word she had to say. And when it was done, I said, geez, this is a movie, or certainly at least a video program, because it's such a wonderful lesson in this story. And so I had occasion to introduce her to a fellow I just met, who was in the video and movie production business. And I introduced them, and I'm thrilled to hear that they're talking about making it into a program.
Oh, that's great.
So I only heard one story, and it's so good. So when you have 12,000 stories, there must be a bunch of those in there for you. So that'd be interesting with your background, your writing skills, to be able to amplify those stories. I would think it'd be some really interesting books of compendiums of themes of stories that you've come across. That'd be nice to share.
We did a book deal with Simon & Schuster, and that was a bestseller, and there's been some interest in doing another one. But to your point, I think a series or a movie definitely lends itself to absolutely.
And everybody's a video producer now.
I know. Everyone has a video camera in their pocket now. So
yeah, you see it all the time. As an event happens, that people go to their pocket like they used to go for a 6-gun in the Wild West.
Yeah, it's so true.
So what's next for Love What Matters?
I think probably working on the podcast network overall. Trying to figure out, how do we develop more shows? How do we figure out what themes we want to double down on? Whether that's, in the video space, whether that's solely podcast, and kind of how do we keep expanding across platform?
And do you have anyone clinically who's worked with you to measure what happens to people who interact on Love What Matters, who share their stories, how it affects their brains, how it affects their behaviors? Is there anything on the scientific level going on that might be helpful to all of us?
That is such a great question. No one's ever asked me that before. And that's been something I've been thinking about now for a little while. And I think is validating because I hear from so much of the audience how it's helped them with anxiety, it's helped them with depression. And so I think getting that would be, getting that validation scientifically would be tremendously helpful.
In working on our book, which is called Lodestar, about the star we all follow to get to the place we want to be, in particular to be our better self. In doing that work, it was so many things jumped out of it. We looked at all the different self-help writings and teachings that have been around since the Bible, and the work of Aristotle and all the current writers and not so current, like people like Dale Carnegie and Napoleon Hill. And the thing that kept jumping off the page at me was two things. One is there are definitely optimists in this world, and there's definitely pessimists. It's easier to be a pessimist, and it's also unhealthy, not only for your mental health, but it has ramifications that are so clear on your physical health as well. And the good news we learned is that we have this thing called neuroplasticity. That is, our brains, we can rewire our brains. We can change our brains chemically through behavior, through learning, through practice, through diet, etc. And you can teach yourself to be an optimist. It's not easy, but you can teach yourself to be an optimist. And it's so much better for us. And by the way, socially, they're a lot more successful. Financially, they're a lot more successful. Because these are people want to be around. The person who says the sky is falling all the time is just not that much fun to be around. They're Debbie Downers. And the optimists in the crowd are the ones that have a lot of friends who are looking out for you, who are interested in you, who want to be friends with you, who want to invest in a relationship with you. And poor John, the depressed guy over there, is suffering in so many ways. But the good news is there's lots of lessons in what we learned that you can change how you feel. And I think I think that what you see on Love What Matters is that people are in that journey to think differently, to learn differently, to change how they're reacting to things, and to learn that, oh my goodness, if I could help somebody else, boy, that makes me feel terrific. And it's part of the rewiring process to realize it's more than just you out there. And if you can help somebody else, it's so good for you. And I guess you get to see that every day.
Yeah, and that's really the growth mindset, right? And that's what people are waking up to, realizing like, okay, this growth mindset is a real thing, and you can change your brain, and it takes work. Yes, it takes discipline. Yes. But you can really alter your brain if you work at it and decide and choose to put that work in. So yeah, I absolutely believe in that.
There's a fellow I'm a fan of. He's a doctor, Dr. Peter Attia, and he's an expert on health, wellness, and longevity. And he was, I heard him, I think it was yesterday morning or this morning.
I've read his book. Yeah, I'm a big fan.
It's terrific, isn't it?
Yeah.
He is so smart about so many things. He annoys me.
It's overwhelming.
Overwhelming.
How comprehensive. It's so comprehensive.
I want him in shorter bites because I need more time to digest what he's saying.
Me too.
And so I'll look at one of his videos, but I'll look at it I'll turn it into short form. I'll listen to it for 5 or 10 minutes, say, okay, I'm going to come back to it tomorrow. I'll come back to it later. But this morning he was talking about how to attend to your physical self. And someone had written to him and says, well, I'm 70 years old. What sense does it make? And he gave so many examples of people in their 70s, late 70s, 80s, who started to change their life physically and how it turned them around emotionally. His point was it's never too late. Different kinds of things that you'll do in different pace, but it's never too late to begin to change.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's that book is, I mean, what is it? 600 pages. I mean, it is
everything Dr. Peter Attia does is 600 pages. He gets into it.
He does. He really does. And the preventative piece of his work is so distinct and just unique in that field, right? You don't really see doctors these days talking in the terms that in the way that he does about.
He wants you to be your own doctor.
Yes. Instead of the treatment, it's prevention. So yeah,
there's
I love him.
Another doctor I've become a distant fan of. His name is Robert Lustig. He's an endocrinologist at Columbia University, originally from Brooklyn. Terrific guy. And he's changed my attitude about a lot of things and about how bad sugar is for us. Colin. I encourage you to check him out too. I put him in the same vein as Dr. Attia, who we've had at Worth events and just owns the audience when he's there. People hang on his every word. But Dr. Lustig has me. So now my son allowed his son, my grandson, he ordered him a Sprite the other day, and I almost came out of my chair.
I'll have to check him out. Although my Diet Coke, addiction is going to have to go.
I had one, and he caused me to stop again.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm hopelessly addicted to that. I need to get rid of it. It's terrible.
Well, Colin, what you get to do all day is pretty amazing. And the impact you're having on so many lives, and the fact that you could do it as a business, that you can do well by doing good is I think, the ultimate thing to strive for in a career, and you're achieving that every day. So I hope there's bigger and better things coming for you, and that your story, your message, your platform continues to help people, and it gets bigger and bigger because we all need help in so many different ways. And it's so nice to A, get help, and B, help somebody else just by sharing. Colin, thanks so much for sharing your story, buddy.
It's my sister's birthday.
Go to 1-800-Flowers.com.
They have tons of great birthday gifts.
Wow.
Whoa.
Happy birthday, baby.
Happy birthday! Wow.
Yummy. I got to contain myself.
1-800-Flowers.
Celebrate the people you love.
Well, I hope you enjoyed what you heard, and I know I'll be sharing it forward. I hope you get to as well. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow me along on Twitter at Jim1800Flowers and on LinkedIn at Jim McCann. Hope to talk to you soon.